Well, despite harder economic times around the world in 2024, the EV production and deliveries showed remarkable growth. And that growth is forecast to rapidly accelerate in 2025 to record levels. I'm Dave, this is Dave Takes It On. There are winners and losers aplenty, so let's see which is which for 2024 and which might surge ahead in 2025. One of the first to report full year figures, 2024, is also one of the losers, Tesla. After a series of record results year after year, Tesla has shown a contraction in 2024. Financial statement is due out on the 29th, so we've yet to see whether this was a good or bad year for profit margins, cash flow, etc. But it was not their best year for production and deliveries, despite a huge effort in Q4 producing record deliveries. They're doing much better in China. Tesla's Tesla. They'll survive, they'll do well in 2025. But to really thrive, they cannot rely on the refresh Model Y. They need to get the budget models on the roads as a matter of urgency. If they do, watch out for a record-breaking surge in 2025, despite anything and everything Elon does or says to try to put people off. It is still the brand to beat. In China, the EV manufacturers are all streaking ahead. In the last week of the year, ending on 29th of December, Chinese brands dominated. By comparison, Ford sold about 2,000 a week back in Q3. Li Auto led the way with 13,400, XPeng 10,100, Geely 9,400, Leapmotor 9,200, Zeekr 8,900, Ito 8,200, Deepal 7,100, Xiaomi 6,700, and so on. There were two outliers. First, Tesla, which they don't class as Chinese. That was 18,600. BYD, which includes mostly hybrids and PHEV, 72,100. Year over year, most are showing consistent registrations, while a few, XPeng, Onvo, Xiaomi, Zeekr and Leapmotor, show really rapid growth this last year. These are mostly new brands and many are still ramping up production. Onvo, for example, only set up in September last year. Xiaomi is still in its first year of sales. That achievement is even more remarkable as Xiaomi was originally a mobile phone company in competition with Apple. While Apple crashed and burned trying to launch an EV, Xiaomi has succeeded. Well, China has a twofold advantage in that they can buy batteries cheaper than the West, but also they are world leaders in adopting the very much cheaper and safer LFP chemistry, while seriously researching and developing even cheaper sodium-ion chemistry. It's not all down to subsidies. Europe still heavily favours the NMC batteries, putting them at a massive price disadvantage. Shot in the foot. Catch up, Europe. Tariffs will not help you much if you insist on installing the dearest batteries on the market from suppliers outside of China that don't have the lowest prices on the market. Once the latest Chinese model reach here in decent numbers, you'll find that even a Tesla fanboy like me will seriously consider, sorry, I can't even say it, but you get the idea. They're good. By the way, please subscribe so you can catch up with me in future videos, maybe to check if I'll still be driving a Tesla by the end of 2025. China is rapidly heading to becoming a 100% EV-only market in 2025, like Norway already has. With EV sales growing and ICE sales shrinking, both seemingly exponential, this has a massive major impact on European, particularly German brands like BMW, Mercedes, Audi, VW. These are classed as premium brands, and while sales are still continuing, Mercedes recorded for the first time ever in October 0 sales of their luxury EQE, despite discounts of up to 50%. Mercedes put this down to volatility in the market. China put it down to their customers viewing it as old-fashioned. Quality certainly, but old-fashioned definitely. Overall in Q3, sales dropped 31% and they're fighting hard to retain any sales in China with their much cheaper prices. In Europe, it was a similar picture with EV sales falling heavily and even their overall sales, including ICE, were down. In a new high-tech world where the processor and camera specs on your smartphone are more important than brand loyalty or style, many people are opting for more tech and less premium quality in their cars. Well, some people see tech as gimmicks, but just picture a picnic where your car seats swivel to form an open space in the middle with a table. You got V2G where you can run a Tassimo coffee maker while you're watching a blockbuster movie on a 46-inch 4K OLED screen with surround sound while it rains outside. And it's got a certain attraction to our modern lifestyle. BMW, on the other hand, are showing a totally mixed bag. They've seen solid sales and significant growth overall in Europe, beating out their rivals like Mercedes, but suffering seriously in China. Q3 EV sales down 29%, year-to-date down 13%, despite new models like the iX1, which are now produced in China. BMW are also seeing ICE sales decline for the same reason as Mercedes. Overall, BMW report they expect to sell less cars in 2024 than they did in 2023. They do have a niche that seems to be holding up in Europe and America, but they need to effectively forget China for the short term. If they're serious about EVs, then they need to head down to that iX1 and get the price down. The petrol version is 33,000, the EV is 47. That price difference between ICE and EV has never worked out for anyone else. See, once even a budget BMW offered better performance and style than most other similar sized cars on the road, albeit at a premium price. Today they don't. The Model Y offers 100-mile longer range, identical 0 to 60 time in a very, very much bigger car, same price. BMW needs to find a new, unique selling point. Well, VW presents a more severe picture. Overall, well down on last year. Passable results in Europe with a good showing from EVs. Stronger results from North and South America, mainly hybrids, but a total disaster in China where the situation is pretty terminal. If China does go all in on EVs and reach 100% in 2025, this market for VW that once produced half of their sales and half of their profits will return zero for VW in 2025. It's a really tough time for VW, and they have just announced around 30,000 jobs have to go. And then they go and choose totally the wrong EVs to launch. See, Tesla has its feet well under the table, and even with millions of sales and the best-selling car in the world 2023 title, they're having a hard time in a saturated market at the moment. VW's one saving grace was to have been the ID.2, a German budget EV with a massive loyal customer base. But no, they go and try to break their way into the saturated Tesla market with the ID.7 at £50,000 and the ID. Buzz for £60,000. What happened to the ID.2? There's still no sign of it launching. Reports are very carefully stating we expect it to launch later. We expect a solid announcement in the next few months. Bad move, VW, particularly when they recently said themselves they have 2 years to turn things around. That time just got much shorter with that wrong decision. Stellantis is equally struggling, but with new direction for 2025. Their joint venture with Leapmotor is likely to be the saving grace next year. The T03 is selling really well elsewhere, and it launches here at £16,000 this year. And the much bigger B10 and C10 launch at around £10,000 cheaper than the existing market it is aiming for. Traditional brands once again struggle to find their place, but you only need a quick glance at the top 10 ICE car sales in Europe in 2024. Dacia Sandero, Renault Clio, Peugeot 208, Opel Corsa, Renault Captur, Toyota Yaris, Fiat 500, Ford Puma, Citroën C3, VW. If you can't see the answer to all legacy problems, you must be blind. In the list, All are considerably less than £30,000, most less than 25, and there are many models there less than 20,000. If you choose to make EVs, this is your market. Very little competition, and most of that facing huge tariffs. With their size and equity, they should have gone straight in and murdered the budget EV market long before Tesla and Rivian could even afford to try. Instead, they targeted the Tesla market themselves. Stellantis at least seem to be heading down there now, with Citroën, Leap Motors, but Alfa Romeo Fiat are still floundering, still some way off. So Renault Captur, one of the best-selling cars in Europe at €21,000. Renault 5e launched at €33,000, 50% dearer. What do these guys get paid for? Tesla and Rivian are forced to go to the top-end, expensive models to try to generate enough money to be able to afford to make a mass-produced model. Renault wasn't. Late in the day, they're beginning to realise, oops, the rich market is saturated, buyers are not paying €10,000 over the odds just to go electric, and we need to get the Renault 5e, Renault 4e and Renault Twingo out like right now and get them well below €25,000. In the UK, the basic R5 is £23,000, but extremely basic, maybe too much so. But basic can work at £17,000 for the Twingo. Well, same with Alpine, virtually nothing to report from 2024, but EV plans for 2025. But playing on a performance name and reputation is not working in a market that has long since moved on. EVs are very quick, full stop. Well, Ford is barely worth a mention. 2024 saw pathetic EV results. They'll be lucky to beat 100,000 cars for the once mighty giant of the auto world. They also stick with their philosophy that they have loyal customers who will pay at least £10,000 more for electric and an additional £10,000 more by selecting the top-of-the-range luxury model now that they've discontinued the most basic ones. While all around are launching their latest EVs on bespoke, state-of-the-art, purpose-designed EV platforms, Ford goes back to cramming all the electric bits into a stripped-down ICE version. Does anyone now know why Ford is the legacy maker that is shouting the loudest about cancelling the 2035 ban and cancelling the penalties for not hitting the 2024 EV mandate of 22%? Hyundai and Kia plod on with an underperformance up to about 5% on their own targets. Okay, but not exciting in a rapidly expanding marketplace. They're also launching new budget EV models in 2025 that the buyers are crying out for. The targets for 2025 are not exciting. It's more like, well, let's try to not lose any more market share or sales. With the arrival of the Chinese, they can expect the Ioniq and EV 5 and 6 market to be hard going, but much more exciting at the cheaper end. Well, more competition, much more certainly, but infinitely more buyers too. And many will prefer Hyundai or Kia to Chinese just on pure bias and prejudice. Well, Japanese are heading to really rough times. Once they were the leading suppliers of cars to the world and the sole suppliers of cars to China. Now they can't sell them any EVs, mostly because they hardly make any, certainly not to come close to matching what China themselves are making. Well, despite Nissan Leaf making great headway in years long past, they chose to follow more the advice of Toyota and stick with ICE and hybrids at a push. In a difficult marketplace, just stick together, continue doing what you're doing, what you've always done. It's got to get better one day. Once they were world leaders in selling cars, they're now losing their way. With the Chinese now dominant in the UK and much of Europe, despite tariffs, their main aim for 2025 must be America, on the grounds that, well, they're not Chinese, and it's a huge market. They have a good reputation there, and EV sales are increasing at about 10% a year, despite an upcoming change of president. Or is that because of the upcoming change? Well, time will tell, but 2025 is not looking that bright for the Japanese EV makers. Well, sales results from 2024 are definitely not going to be anything like the same for 2025. The market, though expanding, is also shrinking at the same time. See, more people are choosing EVs, making it a bigger market, but more of those buyers are not buying, they're leasing. And the average lease is now 4 years. That means instead of trading up to a new car every 2 years, they now start a new lease every 4 years. This is the new reality. ICE cars reached and went through their peak. That's now declining rapidly. EVs are just establishing their own peak, and it's wide open for the future, but different. The mid-price range for EVs, £40,000 to £60,000, that's reached a pretty stagnant point within that market, and that's now very well represented. And Europe and China are battling over who's going to dominate. But EV drivers have discovered a new vehicle ownership model. Leasing allows them to just hand back the old model and pick up a totally new one. And if in doubt, just lease something totally different for a year to see if you like it or if it suits you. It's much more volatile, but so much better. Add in the sub 20,000 models hitting the roads now with incredibly low lease deals and prices of about £16,000. Match that to a vastly improved charging infrastructure. 2025 will prove to be an exciting year. Well, quickly, before the music starts, see if you can hit the subscribe button or check out the Patreon membership details. I'm Dave.
We want to thank you for watching along as Dave takes it on. And if you like what we do, all we ask of you is to click that like and subscribe to follow along.
Thank you for watching Dave Takes It On.
Yep.
I can't think of anything interesting to say.